It is a time for Wildcard Topic Wednesday. And if this is your first time tuning in, what that means is I don't know what the topic is, and we're going to find out together. So the way it works is grab one of my books. I don't know which book we're going to use today. I feel like we should use this one, but we've used this one a lot this week, last few weeks. So I actually had a meeting yesterday with someone who I wrote this book this was published by Wiley in 2012. And it was our first time meeting, but she works with a big national level company. And she said, we have your book in our database, like as one of the resources for the company. So that's why it was on my desk. So why don't we pick that up and use this for today's draw? I'd love to hear from you. Welcome. How are you? Where are you tuning in from? How are things going? Do you need a resilience reset? The idea of this is just a time to let's grow personally, professionally, let's develop, shall we say, and have some fun doing it because I love doing this stuff and this is how it goes. Hey, if you didn't notice, I dropped a new clip from a recent keynote in July. Yes, same background, same outfit as the one I did from April, but no judgment, no judgment. Have I got a little heavy on my makeup there? I have. There we go. Okay, let's do this. So it could end up being something related to networking. I don't know what it is. Hey, Greg, you're finally back at your desk, which is awesome because often if you follow along, Greg is often joining us from the car. Greg, do you think we should use this book? Is this the book we'll use today? Okay, let's go for it. I'm going to pull, see where it is. Oh, this one's too easy. Okay. Look at me disappointed. I want a harder topic. All right. Who's tuning in here? David, awesome to have you here. Oh, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. All right. We've got Amanda coming in. Welcome back from vacation. She was on vacation last week. Lucky duck. Well, not a duck, you know what I mean. All right. So the rules of the game are wherever it ends is what I need to talk about. And so this one is on remembering names. And so we'll try to take it a little bit deeper than just remembering names. But I love this topic. I used to anyway, because everybody used to say, oh my God, I'm so awful at remembering names. And I'm like, okay, let's stop saying that. Because it's one of the greatest reinforcements of a bad behavior in our mind. So, we say, oh, I'm so awful at remembering names. And then lo and behold, you're awful at remembering names. And then you solidify it by saying you're awful at remembering names. Now, the fun thing about COVID, because I'm always about the silver lining thinking, you may notice this is no longer an issue because so many of us are virtual. We have the privilege of having everybody's name on our screen. It's awesome. We don't even have to remember names. We can just see the right names. But what happens when we get back out into the real world and we need to do this? Well, so interesting. I have here a quote. It says, forgetting names is a fact of life, yet it causes a lot of anxiety. So even before I was doing my mindset work and the resilience and all of the big package around, problem solving and what it is I talk about now. And I was even then thinking about how unnecessary stress is often created when it doesn't need to be. Like if we know that forgetting somebody's name is just part of life, right? Then having that cause anxiety is like completely a misplaced emotion. It's just like that's an obstacle that just is. So let's not add any extra to it, right? I don't know what you were saying, Sarah, with what was so true, but whatever it is I said, I'm glad it worked. But it's one of those things that we just forget. Interesting. I'm trying to remember the stories. it's a worthwhile skill to learn. That's fine. Okay, so here was the 4-part framework that I ultimately created for myself in order to become really good at remembering names. And the reason I ended up teaching networking, and that's how I started my speaking practice, was because I was awful at it. And then was like determined. I'm like, I realize I have to be connected with people. I need to learn how to network. I have to overcome my fears and my lack of self-consciousness, or lack of self-confidence. And I need to learn how to network. And so I went out and, lots of embarrassing moments, lots of trials and tribulations. Ultimately, I ended up building a fairly strong, very blessed network of professionals. And remembering names was always a piece of it. But as I went through the networking, I ultimately ended up writing a column. And the column was called The People You Know. And the idea was that I went to events and happenings and all of the really great gigs in the city, and I reported on them. Who was there? What were they doing? What were the little stories? What was the cause? It was not a gossip column by any means. It was always positive. I knew lots of things I never shared because that was just my ethical boundary. But I would literally have 50 conversations in a night and then have to go back to my desk the next day or 3 or 4 days later and remember, okay, who did I talk to? Who was there? What was their name? And then like actually write about it. So I couldn't be wrong. Yeah. Oh, Sarah's filled me in on what she was actually saying is true. Being anxious about remembering names. Yeah, like we don't need to be because we know. And it is easier online because we all have it's like wearing a name badge everywhere we go. So here is the framework. You ready? Shift, listen, solidify, and think. So now I haven't talked about this in a very long time. So this is basically when I stopped. So I started my first probably 6 or 7 years of my business just talking about networking, right? Like how do you mingle? How do you network? Like the basics of it. And then I got to a point where I was like, if I have to teach somebody how to remember names or, mingle or have a conversation again, I might have to put forks in my eyes, I think was what I used to say. And I don't think that's very politically correct. But anyway, it's going to be fun to go through this. So let's go through and find out. So shift. Yes. By shifting our thinking to understand that our brain is powerful and can remember it. Okay. So it's the shifting the thinking. So we only remember a name when we believe the person is important in our life. Let me pause there for dramatic effect. And you're going to be like, Allie, I love and care about every stranger I talk to. And they give me their name in the first 10 seconds of meeting. No, you don't, because it's going to take time. Like our brains can't remember all of the people who we've ever met. Like it's a natural filtration system, right? So until someone or your brain has decided that the person you're talking with is someone that you need to know or is not worth remembering, like the human is of worth. Please don't get me wrong. Okay. I'm not saying somebody's not of worth. They are just by their sheer level of existence. They're worth it. But our brains have to connect to wanting to actually know who that person is. Because if you were to think so maybe every day you've been alive, and I forget how I came up with this statistic. I think I worked it out in the book, but we will meet about 1,000 people, when we're in our real lives, not hanging out at home, about 1,000 people for every year we're alive. So when you start doing the math on that, think about how old you are times 1,000 people. That's a lot of people. And you would probably be hard pressed to name 1,000 people. So you probably actually could, but your brain is just filtering out people. So you think about like every person when you walk into a store and you say hi to the, the person who's doing the meat counter, or when you go to your favorite jeweler and pick out a nice piece of jewelry, and then, just all those little interactions with people. And then you think about your business world, all of the colleagues who you work with, your customers, like it just adds up. It's a lot of people to remember. So the first thing is we have to shift our perspective, and we have to actually be committed to remembering people's names. And so if you have the expectation that every person you engage in dialogue with is going to be your next best customer, your next best client, whatever you call them, or your new best friend, then your brain is going to go, oh, wait a second, I probably need to remember this person's name. The next piece around remembering names, today's wildcard topic, is to listen when you actually hear the name. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but like you'll be in a conversation with somebody you've just been introduced. And like there are times in the past where I've been like, did they tell me their name? Did I hear it? And then you're not even engaged in the conversation, right? You're just like thinking, what was the name again? Was it Bill? Was it Bob? Was it John? Oh shoot, I got to call my cousin John. Like sidebar, like completely unengaged in the conversation. Do you know what I'm talking about? So that happens. So we have to listen when we hear it. And so listen intently and just relax into that moment. So often when we're starting a conversation with someone, our brain is going off in another direction, and it is trying to pull, what is the conversation going to be about? What can I say next that's going to make it sound really good? Like it could be going in a million directions. It could be thinking about, I got to go get my dry cleaning. Like we're not actually listening. And interestingly, I think the next chapter in this is about listening. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so then we need to solidify. And what I meant by this is a picture is worth 1,000 words. And my hope is that you can take a snapshot in your mind of where you're meeting someone, where you're interacting, to solidify 2 words, their first and their last name. And so there are people who, when I was doing that column and I was going around an event and interacting with all these different people, I would like listen to their name, I'd look at them, and it'd be like I don't know, I used to be able to do a camera noise. I don't know. Anyway, however, this little mental image, and it would just like, I would imprint where we met, what was happening. And even now, like I'll see people who I met 15 years ago, and I can still remember where I met them. Like it's just not as much anymore because I'm sort of out of practice. This isn't as something that I do as much. But yeah, that was really important. So solidify it. And then I would go back to my desk and I'd go to start writing my column, and I would start like going through all those mental snapshots, which brings us to the 4th step to be really good at remembering names. And that is to think. To think. We just assume, I'm forgetting people's names. And we don't actually think about the people who we've already talked to. And so when I would leave the event, what I would do is I go, okay, I arrived and I saw Sarah and we walked in together and that was great. And then I write a little note about what do I remember about Sarah. And then I'd say, okay, well, Greg and I were, in lineup together. And then David and I, we got to the bar, and I don't know who else is here, Amanda, right? And then we had a nice little chat off in the corner, and it would literally map out the entire night and go through all these little solidified images in my mind and make notes. And so often when we meet people and we're not remembering them, right? It's because we're just not doing anything afterwards to solidify that experience that we had and to think about it twice. And sometimes, that thinking piece is also being a little bit of a detective. Like if you decide you care about wanting to remember who that person is and you haven't remembered, then call somebody, say, hey, who did you introduce me to? how do they spell their name again? Or, social media is great. The problem with social media is we can have so many people on our links that it's hard to remember who those key people are. So we still have to go through this process of when we're out networking, when we're interacting with people, of making notes and not in front of them. That's always tacky. Oh, let me write down. Who are you again? Doesn't work. You have to remember me all on your own, and then we'll talk about it after. So that's it. So that was how I became a master at remembering names. And the other piece is business cards. I mean, people underestimate the business cards, but often that was my greatest cheat note, right, on who a person was. So looking at it, getting the information, and actually reading the card. Think about that. So often people take it, throw it in their purse or in their pocket. And so instead I'm like, okay, actually read it, look back at the person. And a little bonus tip, if we ever go back to using physical business cards, I don't know if we ever will, a dog ear. When you really want to follow up with someone, I would just dog ear the edge. And then when I got at the end of an event, I would pull out all the business cards that I wanted to, where the priorities were the ones who I dog eared. Okay. So something to consider. Awesome. This has been a fun conversation, hasn't it? She says, looking for validation. Just saying. So awesome to have you here with me. Look, the chapters go on to say, what do you do when you forget someone's name or they forget your names? Sarah's got a comment. I'm pulling it up. Okay, so I found repeating their name back to them helped keep my brain on track. Hi, Greg, nice to meet you. But that's how my brain works. So it's really interesting that you bring up this tip, because I'm going to, I agree with you. Our brains absolutely work with that. Repetition, you actually say it. I always laugh if somebody says it and says the wrong name right away, which is, doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So repeating it once, perfect. Awesome. So great to meet you. Sarah, tell me about yourself. Where this goes wrong is when people repeat it ad nauseum throughout a conversation, because we would never talk that way. Sarah, if you and I were sitting in your backyard and had a glass of wine together and just a water or an iced tea, whatever it is, and we were chatting and I said Sarah 20 times throughout the conversation in an effort to remember it, you would be like, what's wrong? And one of the greatest ways that I was able to find to create quick connections and a solidify a real meaningful connection in a short interaction was to come into a relationship with the expectation that you were already BFFs, so best friends forever. And having that interaction be very normal and very authentic, as if you were already my friend. And so rarely, I wouldn't go, Friday night, I'm going out with some friends. And if I said everybody's name a million times as we were out, it would be really awkward. So I know you're not saying that, but I want to caution, because it tends to happen. People who use the name reinforcement trick, I think it backfires. And I know it's also a rapport building tip that many of the gurus have used over the years. And I'll tell you, I went to 241 events in 1 year networking. That's why I wrote a book on it. And, oh, by the way, don't do that. That's a lot of work. And it's probably not necessary. But I interacted with thousands of people. And so I got to observe the human nature. I got to observe how people are interacting and what actually works and what makes you get that feeling. And repeating a name once, perfect. Repeating a name multiple times, total it's fake. You would never sit across from your kitchen counter and talk to a family member by using their name over and over again, unless you were trying to get their attention. So anyway, I just caution on that as a thought. I'm totally open to comment and debate on that. You can't say more than once, yes, but I am way older than you, so my brain is slower. You're not that much older than me, I don't think. I think we're pretty close. We're going to say we're in the same era. Perfect. Perfect as I spit across my desk. Perfect. I think it's really funny when we do get back out into real interactions in person. I've had a few wonderful, beautiful times. I actually, where did I go? To the dueling pianos at Bellamere Wineries. I don't know if anybody else did that. It was so much fun just to be out with people. But I got to tell you, like Allie, who had to learn how to network, right? Like, which prompted this book. I was like walking in by myself because my friends had already gone in and got the table, and I was like, I was on the phone or something, or we all drove separately. That's why I had to walk in by myself into a room full of 100 people. It was outdoors. And like, I was like, it felt really foreign and awkward and totally familiar and fine at the same time. But it was because our instincts are in there, right? Like if we used to be nervous and shy, then it's still there. We just learned tools to overcome it. And I think one of the challenges with COVID is for those who had to create systems or create, different tips and tricks to get through things that were out of their comfort zone. With COVID, we ended up losing a lot of those patterns. And I think it's harder for people, especially with social anxiety, to come out and be interacting with others. But anyway, back to the topic of our Wildcard Wednesday, remembering names. I'm trying to find it back in this book. Where did it go? There it is. Because what do you do when your name has been forgotten? Because I think the biggest thing, it's like, yeah, we got to remember other people's names. But if we know that people forget names, can we not assume that other people have forgotten our name? And so one of the things I always like to do, if I think there's a chance that somebody may not know who I am, quite possible, like haven't seen them in a while, whatever, I will be gracious enough to remind them who I am. Okay, so hi, Allison, we met at, like just to make somebody else, because if we know there's a little bit of an anxiety around remembering names, then let's let somebody else off the hook. And because I was in the media for a lot of years, there were a lot of people who knew who I was, but I didn't necessarily know who they were. It was just the nature of writing a column back when columns were actually like something that people really read and were looking at, like it was, just going to fill up my water. It was this thing, but I'm always surprised when I say, oh my gosh, so great to see you again. And somebody says, oh, I don't know you. Or I've never met you. Not because of me. I mean, like just in general, that awkwardness. So if somebody says, oh my gosh, Allison, so great to see you, and I have no idea who they are, I'm going to play along. And I encourage you to too. Don't call them out on, oh, I don't remember who you are. Like play the game a little bit to make them not feel embarrassed that they remember you and you don't remember them. Okay, so just say, oh my gosh, so great to see you. And then you sort of piece it together. And then a little bit after you can go, okay, remind me where we met. Like and then just be honest about it. Like I know we know each other. I know we've had a conversation before and my mind is just not working. Please tell me exactly what it is. So don't take offense when somebody remembers your name. But here was the thing that I found so helpful. Are you ready for my trick? And I know a lot of people probably already do this. But if I was at an event and people, like somebody came up and like I'm notorious for introducing people and then letting them connect and then I walk away, right? So that's one of my mingling tricks. I call it the third party introduction. It's a great way to exit a conversation. But sometimes you don't remember who one of the people's names are, right? And so all I do is I say, have you two met? That's it. You just stand back and go, and if you know one of the person's names, you might say, oh, do you know David? Right? And just like ask so put one name in and then do it and say, oh, have you two, or don't do either name and just go, have you two met yet? And then inevitably what will happen is they'll look at each other and go, yes, we have, or no, we haven't. And then they'll introduce themselves. And, if they don't, Well, if they haven't met and they don't introduce themselves, then technically they still haven't met. Not your problem. Not your problem. Yeah, it is. It saved me in so many different situations. Thanks for saying that, Sarah. So I don't know. What a fun thing. This is why we do the Wildcard Topic Wednesday. We pull from one of my books, and I've got 3 here at the house that are printed. I've got several that are ebooks. I do want to let you know that if you have any other questions, we can talk about it. But as I wrap, I have started doing a weekly lift up, which is about a 1-minute read on email that's delivered on Tuesday morning. And essentially, it's just like a little thought for the week to pick you up. So an extension of this, short, sweet. If you want to know how to get onto that, let me know. And send me a private message wherever you're watching this, and I will, with your email, and I'll be sure you're on that list, which is great. And other than that, I think it's time. Tomorrow we are going to do I am going to do a review on the book Principles by Ray Dalio. Absolutely love this book. It was the next one on my summer reading list, which is now coming my summer, fall/winter reading list based on the pace at which I've been reading lately. So, if it takes me a week and a half to read a book, then I'm not going to get through 35 books in 8 weeks. So it was really fast at the beginning. And then that one book sort of slowed me down. And now I'm just out of the habit. But it doesn't matter. It's about the journey. It's not about the speed. And I have a friend who's publishing a book, so that's getting inserted into the reading list this weekend. Anyway, so tomorrow we'll talk about Ray Dalio's Principles book. I can't wait to share that with you. And I hope you're having an absolutely beautiful, wonderful day. And I hope that this fun little conversation around how to remember names can help you out of a jam as you go out into the world. Sarah, you're awesome. Thank you. Keep being brilliant. You rock, you inspire, you're kind. I do love doing what I do. So the fact that you love it makes me even happier. So, all right. Have a beautiful day, night, wherever you are in the world, and or morning. And I will see you tomorrow, 3:15 Eastern. Bye for